Thank you.
We'd like to call to order the meeting of the Perkins Public Library Trust for Thursday, May 2nd at 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
All right. Brian Huckabee.
Here.
Linda Barda.
Here.
Charlotte Perrick.
Here.
And Valerie Hill and Melissa Mills are absent today.
Thank you. Number 2, consideration and action on consent agenda, approval of minutes from the April 4th meeting, and approval of financial report.
I think the last report we got showed it was like available funds and
Not it divided out.
just a budget.
Am I still allowed to?
Yeah. I'm just getting
You gotta go sit in the corner for 5 minutes.
I accept my punishment.
You're fine. We're on number 2.
If you think the minutes looked all right, I did.
Yeah. I told him I felt like our revenue last time, just a total amount instead of broken out. But the everything looked good. Entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second. Sorry.
Pretty good.
All right. Then we got Brian,
Yes.
Linda, Charlotte,
Yeah.
and Melissa. Yes.
Number 3, discussion of possible action on items removed consent agenda. None were removed. Number 4, public appearances, petitions, communications, and personal appearances. Do we have anyone who is wanting to speak today? Okay, thank you. Number 5, consideration and discussion regarding update from Brian Huckabee on the progress of the new library project.
Nothing outside the scope we've been looking at. So,
Yeah. No changes. Number 6, consideration and discussion regarding next steps of the new library renovations. Waiting on a contract, aren't we?
pretty much.
Okay. Can you tell us kind of where we're at on that?
Well, here's the thing about these, by the way, I'm Tammy Ewing. I'm the city attorney, and I review all the agendas. I reviewed this one, but as I was looking at this one, I was like, we really probably should have put that later, because if we just move on to the next.
We can hold.
Because since Bob's not here, I don't know that we might want to, that's a real general, broad statement. So if we go to the specifics, and then if you want to come back to that agenda item, if you want to get more broad, then get more broad, is that?
We can do that. Number 7, consideration, discussion, of possible action to approve contract with Corbin Mertz and Haney for architectural and interior design services on the new Perkins Public Library, 2019 South Main Street, at a cost of $73,500 plus reimbursable expenses as stipulated.
Okay, on that matter, I did receive an email back from Mr. Merz today, but we have not gotten a final contract. Having said that, since the passage of the sales tax and all of this that's been going on within the last week, I've really had to rethink how to make this happen. And so at this point in time, and we'll talk about that in the next agenda item, but at this point in time, I'm asking you to take no action on that. Because number one, two reasons. Number one, there's no contract ready to go. And number two, just for your information, I'm recommending that that contract be with the city and that it be on the city's agenda at the next meeting. So it should be, I mean, we're real close to having a contract, and it should be ready to go for the May, is it 13th meeting, the second Tuesday in May. So hopefully you can still keep moving forward on that.
So since we made the proposition to get those proposals, and we are the ones who scored those proposals, how does that affect us as a trust as far as us carrying forward with that contract?
Well, you would be, you can do, as a trust, you can do the background work, you can do all of the work that you want to do. And then you would just basically decide that the funds would be transferred to the city to pay. It's an accounting issue, really. So what you could do is to amend, I see what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense right here to say that you're moving to recommend a contract with MERS, Corbin, MERS, and Haney in that amount to the city council. Because that's kind of the way that we anticipate this coming, is that you guys are raising the money, you're raising it for a purpose, and then you're recommending to council that they, if it's going to be a council project or council contract, you'd be recommending that they enter into it.
So we need to take action on this, or we need not to take action?
You don't need to, but I think it makes sense if you'd like to say that.
But we don't have a contract to approve as of yet, correct?
Right.
So what we've said thus far is we've done the scoring, we have put forth that is that's the design team that we wanted to use. So if we recommend it again, that doesn't really change what we've already done, right? I mean, if we say again, we recommend this, that the city makes this contract, or is it the thing is that we're recommending that the city make the contract? That's the thing that's new? Is that?
And that, well, number one, I don't know that you've at any point done, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but actually done a motion and to approve a contract with.
No, because we haven't received the contract.
Yeah.
Right.
We
So,
made a motion to reach out that said this is the one that won our scoring that we wanted a contract with.
so so it does make sense for you to make a recommendation to council that they enter into a contract with MERS, Corbin, MERS, and Haney for that amount.
And I guess for time's sake, it makes sense then if we'd make a motion right now that we would take action to recommend council approve such contract, assuming you get it sorted out prior to the next meeting, so that we don't have to reconvene and nobody's asking us for approval yet again. So,
Yes.
I don't know how we want to word that exactly.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna need
I'll make
to
a
clarify
motion
that a bit
that,
better.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve or recommend council approve this contract once she is good with it.
A contract, you're saying a contract with Corbin, MERS, and Haney, subject to city attorney approval?
Yeah.
Does that work?
But still, city council has the right to approve or not approve at that point. We're just
Yes.
recommending to them that they do it.
Right.
I got a first. Do I have a second?
And they'll understand that you've raised them, that the money is going towards this contract as well. I mean, that's why I think this motion makes a lot of sense. But I'm sorry, I don't like it when that happens. Did someone second that motion?
Not yet.
I'll second it.
All right, Charlotte?
I always say, don't talk between the first and the second, and then I start talking.
All right, then Brian,
Yeah.
Linda,
Yes.
Charlotte,
Yes.
and Melissa.
Yes.
All right,
They skipped number six, because it was so broad. Seven,
Okay.
so.
would you like me to go back to number 6 at this time? Or just go on?
So,
Okay, number 7. Oh, we're, 7's finished. Number 8, consideration, discussion, and possible action defining the requirements for completion of the new Perkins Public Library 2019 South Main Street, including processes and procedures for loan procurement, competitive bid provisions, funding, and debt service.
So this is the agenda item regarding what I emailed out to everybody. I emailed it to Library Trust and Library Board, and several other people.
Anything?
oh, you didn't?
Is that this paper? Is that,
Yes.
is that one?
Yes. Yep.
Were we to have gotten it earlier?
You got it in your email. Or you should have.
I haven't seen it
I
yet.
know that you were
Last
included
night
in the
about
email.
5:30, somewhere in that was when I first saw it.
Tonight?
Last night.
So if anybody has any questions, or if you want me to reiterate what I wrote, I can do that. Basically, there was the issue, I don't know if you've covered any of this.
No, we just talked about the contract.
The Perkins Public Library Trust was formed to manage money, and this week I learned that there's different forms of trusts with municipalities. I was under the impression prior to this week that trusts could take on debt, which is kind of a blanket term, and I found out while trusts can take on debt, it has to be specified in the trust indenture when the trust is formed. So there's different kinds of trusts. This trust, according to the way it was written, was formed to manage money to benefit the library. It does not include loans and contracts or anything like that. So we were trying to plan how can we move forward with our plan to use the sales tax money so we don't have to wait on the 10 years of disbursements basically before we move. And we realized we could use another trust that we have called the Perkins Industrial Development Authority, which was formed to take on debt and create things and enter into contracts or whatever. But that's the trust that was formed with Redbud in mind. And that's how the city built Redbud and all that stuff, and they did the debt service through the trust. So, and then when you throw in the sales tax money comes to the city because it has to by law, it just got a little more cumbersome. So it's going to be cleanest and best, and I won't talk for the attorney, she's here, and to our auditor, that the city enter into the contracts, the city move forward with the project through the city commission. So we wanted to create recommend to the city commission that they create an advisory committee so that each of the library trust, friends, and whomever else, the librarian staff, can be on that advisory committee to work with the architect and then get the building planned like everybody wants it. And then once that's done, the architect would put together the bid packet and the budget. We will do a request for proposals on funding to local banks depending on what the budget is, to see who can give us the lowest interest rate. I think it would be wise to try to finance it locally versus using federal money, because sometimes federal money can be cheaper interest rate wise, but when you get into the administrative side of it and having to follow so many of their rules and jump through all those hoops, it can actually be more cumbersome than it's worth. So then the city would, the financing would go through PIDA. The sales tax money is going to come into a separate fund that's been created at the city for the libraries. Sales tax is Fund 10, Park and Rec sales tax is Fund 12. So, and our auditor explained to have, an in and out account basically in those so everything can be tracked easy. But then the city has the ability and the authority to enter into contracts and manage that stuff and do the competitive bidding to make sure all the steps are followed. Then the architect does the bid tabulation, recommends to the city commission, and contractors and stuff like that. And you move forward building the building.
First you hire an engineer, and then you hire the
Yeah.
yeah.
So, okay. So what I understand that you're saying is that that we would be just essentially handing it over to the city to do all the things that I kind of thought we were supposed to do. Is
I
that,
think that was the original thought, but the way the library trust is written, the library trust doesn't have the authority.
okay. And so then you want to create another board, another committee? I guess that's where I'm kind of like, why can't we just be the advisory committee? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess you could, if you didn't want to have any of the library board members or the.
I mean, I feel like we're open to talking with the library board and friends and have them give us
We
feedback.
talked about at our last meeting,
We
putting
already-
together a
we already
group so
have
that
in a
it would
way.
be a smaller group instead of 25 of us sitting in a room together.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
been the discussion the last few meetings, is not necessarily be, completely in charge, but at least coordinate that effort without, creating yet another committee.
Yet another committee. That's my deal. Is like I guess I just kind of and maybe I'm an outlier, but I just am looking at this going, another committee that's also going to have public meetings. That's also and it's a subset of us, and then we're going to also have these meetings. And I'm just like, wait, can we can we simplify? I just don't. That's
I mean, I still think they need to have some input on that.
You don't think they've already had?
I do think they've had some time to give input.
They've already had quite a bit of input.
Well, I guess we're.
This was just a suggestion because I didn't want to be accused of cutting anybody out.
And that's not, I don't think that's what this discussion is getting
No.
towards, us cutting anybody out. It's just trying to simplify and streamline.
If we can do it that way,
I mean, we're already advisory in the
We are.
fact that
I
we,
feel like the
Except that you're, except, I think that's really a question for the commission, is whether or not they want to have an advisory committee made up of these other entities, or if they want to
have the library
have the
trust.
library
record.
trust do
So,
it.
so
Do it.
PETA, who is on PIDA? Is it the commission itself?
It's the commission plus 2 other people.
but their only function would be acquiring the loan.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not going to be involved with,
Okay, gotcha.
that's financing.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, I think if it streamlines things to keep it with the trust as the advisory, we'll still basically do the same thing that's in your
I don't
writing.
have an issue with that at all, as long as there's not a legal
Just-
issue.
I mean, I feel like
I guess from
if
my
other
point of
people
view.
wanted to be involved, they could join the trust. I mean,
The only thing is,
Could
all the
they?
meeting, if the trust, the one thing I can think of is, if the trust is the advisory committee, or whatever, then every meeting of the trust with the architect will have to be done at a public meeting.
Yeah, that's true, that's why we were,
Because if you do 2 from each board, then you're not having to say it's a.
You don't have a quorum.
that's what, yeah, we're trying to.
But you can do that, I mean, you could have you could just, if schedules are fairly flexible, and you can meet with the architect here in the meeting room to discuss.
Is that how every city works?
But
So
then you would-
does every city have a committee that meets with an architect and a public hearing type?
I can't say that every city does. My experience has been that advisory committees are fairly common when there's a lot of different entities involved. I know that I was and the good thing about an advisory committee is you've got a time period. You're appointed for 9 months, 12 months, however long it might take. And if it takes longer, you go get another appointment. But I was involved with one for 18 months that was made up of 2 people from a planning commission, 2 people from the Board of Adjustment, 2 people from the city council, and I can't even remember what, because my job was to make sure that 3 people from the planning commission didn't show up and start, you know, because we were trying to coordinate people who were interested in this one particular development. And so it is a normal thing, and that's why I think
Would
it
it be-
came up. But
Would it be possible, if they wanted to be the advisory committee, that they had 2 people do the unofficial meeting, or the, not unofficial, but the various meetings with the architect that'll take place before a major milestone?
yes.
And then you have the major milestone meeting, 35, 65, and 85, or whatever, here? Like,
They would just
then
be
you
a
don't have,
subcommittee.
then
They
you
would
wouldn't
be a
have to keep
subcommittee.
minutes or
Right.
anything like that, so.
And then if members of the trust or the other groups wanted to attend these meetings, these are public, I mean, they can.
As long as they don't have a quorum.
But I still think,
They don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
I still think we would go back to the 2-2-2 deal, though, like we've always talked about, whether it's, like I said, without creating a whole new committee, it would be just a coordinated
Subcommittee.
committee effort. It would be non-quorum, that people can spend Saturdays as a group of 6 or 8 people that would not have a quorum and work through
So are you
issues.
saying this model that's spelled out in
Well,
this?
this model, without setting up yet another official committee. I pr-
Would the city commission though still have to appoint that advisory committee?
Yeah.
Well, and I'm also thinking from the architect's point of view, I'm trying not to make this a huge pain. I want him to spend his time being creative and drawing stuff and not sitting here going through public meetings and 18 people trying to ask him questions all at once. We were trying to.
I agree.
The idea was try to have little subcommittee, make decisions, give him feedback, wait for
So
that
could they
feedback.
form a subcommittee consisting of 2 people that are gonna meet with the architect until there's times to have a,
And then until
whatever your
it's time to bring the
milestones are?
architect or-
So 2 people from here could carry the information to the architect, meet, you know, just wherever, his office, your office, whatever. And then,
And then we would have those 35, 65, 90s that
That
would
are-
be distributed to every board, and then we could have that Saturday morning meeting or Thursday evening, whenever, that could be quorum or non-quorum, but have folks from each group come in.
just don't
Well,
have
but
a
if, well, if it is quorum, it would be a pub, I'm just saying.
It'd be here.
we could do
Right.
a
It
public-
would be a public,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a public meeting.
The quorum is the,
But if we did the 2-2-2 deal, then we still have, everybody's involved at the right time to give input,
Right.
so.
well, he's married to Nikki, she's.
Since I'm,
You think they're, okay, as long as.
since
you're
I'm on
okay
all
with it,
the
I'm good.
boards, I don't think it's a big deal.
So we're,
Okay, so like Charlotte, who's on all the boards, she's not counted on each board if she's there. She's counted on whatever board she would be appointed from that board, correctly?
She's on the library board too?
Library Board,
Yeah.
Trust, and Friends.
And the Friends of the Library.
And Friends of the
So
Library.
she counts as 1 person from each board.
She does.
So you can't
As
be on the
far as the
committee.
quorum is concerned.
Not from Friends of the Library, well, maybe.
But if there's no other people, or there's 1 other person from each of those boards, she'd be fine. There's not a quorum. A majority of members makes a quorum for either board.
See, this is why, in a way, the whole advisory committee model makes me feel better because it's real designated which 2 people from these different boards are showing up. But,
but then it's,
But you could
then it's
do,
post agendas ahead of time, have a scheduled meeting, and it just adds time to the whole order.
you could do a subcommittee consisting of 2 people from the library trust
Yeah,
that are gonna coordinate with the architect.
yeah.
And that would,
If you like that, and then we'll still do the 2 from each group as needed to get all the upfront information and get the architect started. So,
And
I
which
mean,
Jennifer
we-
did a lot of that this week. I mean,
and
she
she's
sent
already
out
started on that, so, I
information
mean,
to
the-
all
The
the,
spirit of what you've written still is being done, just in a easier manner, I think. If that's cool with you.
I wouldn't,
would you be there?
I wouldn't talk about anybody else attending any meetings, because we don't just wanna skirt the city commission and create a subcommittee that's unofficial. Because then if too many people show up and there's a quorum and you're conducting business, then everybody can get in trouble, and I don't want to do that. This board's decision would be to create a subcommittee consisting of 2 members that are gonna
Report back to you.
report back to the trust and are gonna coordinate with the architect.
That
All
works for
of
me.
us can't coordinate with the architect?
Yes, you can,
As a,
as a group and at a scheduled meeting.
but his contract is only for so many meetings, so
Yeah.
after so many meetings, I don't remember what was in that box.
Yeah, there's
but-
trip charges and travel costs,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to simplify and,
Yeah. But if you get to a point where you want to have a meeting with members of the library board, then we just schedule a combined meeting and you meet. It just needs to be scheduled as.
Most of the meetings would be between the 2 people and the architect,
But yeah,
probably at the architect's office. And then there's gonna be something that comes up and the 2 members are gonna think, we probably need to go back to the board, the trust with this, and bring it up on an agenda and discuss it, and then get back to the architect. But that wouldn't require a meeting every time there was a meeting with the architect.
well, after initial discovery and passover of programming information feedback, there's gonna be a spell there where there's just gonna be a lot of email.
Back and forth.
He's gonna shoot
Yeah.
draft plans,
Yeah.
and we can shoot around, and everybody say,
Yeah.
love it, hate it, change this, move that wall, shoot it back to him.
Just don't reply all.
Yeah,
oh no, but you're saying he's gonna shoot that to all 4 of them?
No.
well, I'm saying,
If
it's-
it was a
To the
draft.
subcommittee,
Two.
to the subcommittee,
I'm saying that
Yeah.
information
yes.
can be shared without big official meetings or
Yes.
trips from the architect.
The key to the whole deal is if the library trust wants to appoint 2 people to be a subcommittee to coordinate with the architect, then that's what you do, and then those 2 people meet, and you just move forward. And I don't think there's an issue with
I
that.
feel
at
like
all.
if we were gonna do that, I think it makes sense for you to be one of those people, Brian.
I do too.
And then do any of you feel strongly that you would like to be the second person, or?
I can, but I don't care either way.
Can we, I'll feel more comfortable if your next meeting has this as an agenda item to appoint 2 people to a subcommittee. And you do it as official agenda item?
But we can just have a special meeting to do that.
Do we need the city, does the commission need to make any ruling on that as well? Since they're doing the
No,
contract,
because they wouldn't be doing a subcommittee, or they wouldn't be appointing an advisory committee, right?
but I mean, the contract's in their name. It seemed like they need to maybe define us as their voice and, authority to manage that contract with the architect.
Well, I don't know that they would be, appointing you with authority, because what you will be doing is making a recommendation to them, ultimately.
Yeah, once all the architecture is done,
You'll say, this
we
is what we
recommend
propose.
we use these plans for bids, and we build this.
Well, if anybody has any issue with it though, do we give it to them at 35, 65, 95, or just at the very end?
You could. You could, and just have them consider it at a meeting.
But then that's 3 months.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah.
I'm fine with a subcommittee. I mean, I trust us to make decisions and work with the other groups to get a design that benefits everybody for generations to come. And
I think it's a great idea.
I think the council trusts us, or we wouldn't.
Oh, yeah, I'm
So
sure they do.
if everybody likes that, then I guess next meeting, and I guess depending on if that contract gets put together,
It'll be on the May 14th or whatever it is.
then I guess we could consider having a special meeting if we need to get that motion taken care of so we can start
Yeah.
officially on
Yeah, you could have a special meeting that'd be
May
essentially
15th.
5 minutes long.
Like next Thursday, or maybe it takes 2 weeks to.
I think they can do it. Because they're defining the processes.
We said the 15th, we usually meet on Thursday. I don't know what else is on the calendar.
No, I'm just wondering, I'm rethinking, do you think they could go ahead?
I think they can just because it says processes.
I think that's probably, yeah, we worded that so broadly that we're still under that agenda item number 8. And so I'll take back what I said. If you want to go ahead and somebody wants to make a motion to appoint
Two people to a subcommittee
subcommittee.
to coordinate with the architect.
I feel like you
I'm
have
here.
more experience than me.
I really don't care.
And you might also, I don't have a lot of time.
Well, Linda's chair and she's got time.
Yeah, I'm not saying you have time, I'm just saying.
Okay.
So I have no problem being on it, and I'd like to see Linda on it. So,
And I think this is a lot better deal than what I wrote because it cuts out the more stuff.
yeah.
So do I move that Brian and Linda are
Our subcommittee.
subcommittee?
Make a motion to appoint two people to it? Is that your word, subcommittee?
You'd move to appoint
Linda and Brian to be a sub.
to be the subcommittee for the library trust to coordinate with the architect.
I so move.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Brian,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Charlotte,
Yes.
and Melissa.
Yes.
I had to change my little phrasing notes. All right, we are good.
All right, item 10, new business.
Skip that.
Oh, no, I did 9. Sorry, I told y'all I am on medication. I am number 10, adjourn.
There's no reason to discuss. There's no reason to discuss item 6, I don't think, is there?
Unless you-
I didn't know if we needed to make a note for it.
I did have a question while you were here. I don't know which item it falls under, so I might be too late. But
Well, why don't, since 6 is so broad, why don't you just call item 6 and we'll,
Okay, go back to item 6. Consideration, discussion regarding next steps of the library renovation.
well, when we had the architects here in Mertz specifically, we had a discussion about splitting out the exterior work from the interior. And I think I mentioned this last time, that, I mean, we have a little bit of funds left over after we transfer. I think Friends still has money. We may still have some donations that may sneak up. So in the spirit of getting the exterior finished, using funds available, especially T-Mobile funds, and reducing the overall cost of the project. If we take more work away from the GC package, you're saving, overhead, profit, everything else off of that. So the idea was have them kind of do a package for the exterior. It would still be in the full set of plans that we get, but do it early in the process and then tackle that part of the work prior to bidding out the interior. Is that something that turns you off?
is the exterior gonna cost more than 100,000?
Our original budget, the EFS was about 35, the brick was
Sandblasting and all that, yeah.
30. Well,
Be getting,
so the entirety of it, we could spend over 100 for all the portions of work.
My concern is that there is a concept in the law, requirement in the law, that we not take pieces of a contract such that we're splitting it and avoiding the Competitive Bid Act. And we can get really slapped down for that. So I don't think that is probably a good idea for a couple of reasons.
But I guess it would still be competitive bidding on it. I mean, it'd be over 30,000 for each portion of work.
Well, the competitive bidding applies to a project over $100,000. So, if we split it into anything less than 100,000, we'd have a problem. Any piece of that Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So you want us to spend at least 100,000?
But that's kind of the path we were taking before we got the tax measure in place and all that,
Yeah,
that we
that's
were ready
what-
to,
We had hoped to have this part done.
do that, so we were still trying to maybe keep the wheels turning and,
If he puts together a complete exterior package, no matter the cost, and we competitively bid it, could we do that?
What is the, do you remember, hand me that contract with MERS that you printed out, because you were smart in thinking? Is this the one he sent me today? Do you know?
Oh, I haven't gotten that one yet.
Because I asked him to, I said, you gotta include in, here somewhere, no it isn't. He did a good job of adding, because I saw it on the computer, but I don't have it here, what this project is. I'll have to-
But when we met with all of them
So-
down there, we explained that we had hoped to have that exterior done, but we wanted some input as to how to do
it's
it.
still part of the design contract.
That-
It is
okay.
73,500, it designs interior and
Yeah,
exterior.
it's the whole thing. The only thing I'm talking about is
Moving
doing,
forward, but it doesn't change his
No.
engineering at all, I mean, his architectural services at all. It just changes the timing of the construction of different pieces. And we might be able to do that. The
Well,
thing is that, here's, and Brian, I think you have done a yeoman's amount of work for this building. Yeah. It's pretty incredible, and especially given that you're doing it through a governmental entity, without the governmental, or a governmental entity being the trust, without the normal governmental supports that are in place for trusts. I've watched this process mostly over the last year or two when we're looking and when I'm reviewing contracts. And it's been a difficult process because it's Brian, for the most part, and Jen, and me, you know, really, for the most part, and Bob, I'm not cutting you out of it, but I am cutting him out of it because this trust, not only does it, the trust indenture, not only does it not provide for you to fund to go borrow money, which is kind of the purpose typically of an express trust. My concern is that this doesn't meet the definition under the statute of an express trust. But it also doesn't name a general manager for your trust, which normally they do. So, like, I've looked at the indentures of almost all, if not all of them. PIDA names a general manager. PPWA names a general manager. So Bob can go in and he's the designated general manager for those trusts as well as city manager. So he is legally able to go in and manage that. He hasn't been able to do that with you guys because he doesn't have the authority under the trust indenture. And because I keep saying to him, Bob, we don't want to have a merger problem. And I know he referred to that in his email, but I'll explain it a little bit. Trusts are subject to public trusts are subject to all of the same rules as normal trusts. And a better way to kind of explain this is if you've got a business and you've got an LLC or an Inc., because you don't want to be personally liable for the business's debts, but then you don't do what you need to do, you don't do your business through the LLC, you don't do what you're supposed to be doing, then the courts can eventually say, nope, that merged and you lost all those protections of that LLC. The same way with a trust. If he comes in and starts managing your trust, there's case law that says where the courts have found, nope, city, that's not really a trust, and you lose all the protections because the city's just doing it, and you lose the ability to go borrow money. That's typically the case. You lose the ability to go. Those advantages of the trust, they go away. So I keep saying, I've said to him, he knows, you don't get to manage this. We got to do this the way we're doing it, with Brian doing it you know, and y'all doing it, and it's really the hard way. And so that's why I was, one of the reasons, you know, the lawyer hat on me said, yay, we've got sales tax, because now we can build this library the way that public buildings are supposed to be built. You know, the way you guys have been doing it is what, the best you could do with what you had. And, you know, and that's what we do in Perkins a lot of times, is the best we can do with what we have. But now you've got this great opportunity. So,
Well, if you want to think about that question, you don't have to answer now. about
yeah,
the
I just
exterior
don't want to
stuff.
have these little side
And I don't want to muddy it too much, but.
contracts going on that he can't manage, because you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I'm thinking that if even that might be something that we do through the city. We just break it up, and I mean, you can, he's already thinking about it, how to do that. So yes, I'm not saying we can't do it, I just don't want to continue the way that we've been doing with contracts with the trust for the same building, that's a city building, that's got city employees in it, and it just makes me a little uncomfortable.
Well, we can table that.
Well, he knows it's on the radar.
I'll work on it, and one of the things I'll work on it, to figuring it out in the dollar amount, you know, whatever the architect comes up with for a budget on that part will play a part on how it happens.
It could just,
I mean,
it
you
could be
could-
more expensive to do it that way, ultimately, but I don't know, because you're better at that than I am.
Well, if I had my wishes on it, we would contract them individually. We do EVAs and masonry.
How long do we?
If we do bid them out together, then it goes to a GC again, and then
Bonds.
it doesn't make any sense to do it. It makes
Well-
sense just to leave it with the full package and go on.
Yes.
So, like I said, all I was trying to do is save some money and some time. So if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense.
I don't know that we're saying that.
How long do we have to spend that $50,000?
Well, that's being spent, right?
Is that,
It's already deposited.
No,
Not on this, oh, I'm sorry.
no, I don't think there is a time limit on that 50,000. And you can also, somebody could send a letter to T-Mobile from the city or wherever and say, you know, when we applied for the outside, and now we've got a new opportunity to do the whole project. Do you mind if we use this money towards the whole project? I mean, it would still go towards the outside. It'll just be kind of mixed in with the project, and see if they have an issue with that.
So who would be writing that letter?
But I don't,
We-
the city of Perkins is who got that grant.
It
I mean,
would
I
have-
wrote the
it would have to
grant,
come through.
and Brian helped, but the city of Perkins
The
was,
city would be the one that would
Have
write
we already
this.
written that? We've already written that letter.
oh,
To T-Mobile?
Yeah, to our contact at T-Mobile,
okay, okay,
To see if it's an option.
yeah, to see if it's
okay.
even possible.
gotcha.
And they said,
They haven't said
Nothing
yet.
yet.
well, then I guess sometime in the near future, we need to have a discussion on funding. Like, obviously, we gotta get design done, get a construction budget. But we have Friends that has some funding. We got the 50,000 sitting there. We've got some slush funds, maybe some other donations, so we could compile,
Yeah, so once we
compile
get-
that, so we can go to the bank and say, look, here's what we think we have, here's what
We actually have.
we need that we can put in the pot to
And that's what
start.
we would do as soon as we get a budget from the architect. In the meantime, the different boards or members could be figuring out, I mean, I'm sure it's not hard to figure out what each board has or wants to give towards the project, and then we just subtract that amount from the loan, add 15% contingency or 20, and get financing and be ready to move. But those things can be happening, you know, prior to the actual getting the budget, knowing we have X amount of dollars to put towards it, so whenever we get the number from the architect, we can do a request for proposals, or I can, very quickly to local banks in the area, banks in Oklahoma or whatever, send it out to as many banks as I can, truthfully. So we're doing this, and it's gonna be It's gonna be backed up by a sales tax that was approved by the people for this use. That's expected to bring in this much. And it's a very strong loan. I mean, it's not a weak loan for them.
Well, I guess based on what we know now about how our trust is set up, what we can and can't do, once we get through the design phase on this thing.
What's our role?
What's our role? Yeah.
Maybe even construction, I guess we still have, I guess there's still people that are gonna wanna donate, but
Well, yeah,
It
they're
goes
still there to
from-
raise money.
it goes from the
It goes to the
friends.
friends.
A lot of it goes straight to the friends, and then they might give it to us or straight to the city. So I'm just trying to figure out, is that, I guess we're relegated back to just that role
Yeah,
in time, that we're just.
Well, and is there a ability to like dissolve this trust and maybe we go join the other boards and stuff? I mean, is that something that could happen in the future or when this project
Or
is,
create a new trust that's more,
or create a new trust
Set
that
up
actually
to-
does?
Got a bigger
what we want?
well,
parameter.
once you have the money, I mean, but the other thing, you know, I'm gonna probably rely a lot on you personally through the construction phase.
well,
You
yeah,
know,
we'll
not
still
as
be here
an
for that.
official trust member, but
Right.
And
So
honestly, none of us, personally, I won't be sad if the trust dissolved at the end of that, because it's taken a lot of time and effort.
yeah,
Some of us,
and that would be an option.
so,
But I mean,
I'm not saying
it's not-
dissolve it, but I just want some clarity on the.
Where
trust
you
was
see
formed-
our goal.
The
We
trust
can,
was
we can be
formed-
involved in the library in other ways.
Right.
Too.
And the trust was formed to collect money and manage money for,
Getting that
The
building.
building.
But the trust does have a lease on that building,
Right.
which I never understood why, and is that gonna remain in place
Well,
forever, or?
what would make most sense is just to terminate the lease.
Give them their dollar back.
City
That lease
building.
makes- That lease makes no sense to me.
Never did.
In the current fact situation that we have. Yeah, I honestly, I'd probably be recommending that no matter what, is that lease makes no sense.
it would have made sense had the trust been formed with the ability to take on debt and enter into contracts,
Yeah, it still
I
might not.
think. Well, from my
Yeah,
non-legal mind.
yeah.
But I think that was the goal, because hey, we're gonna take on debt to do this building, so we need to have some document to show the banker.
That's what it says, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what
so-
the lease says, and I'm like,
And that may be, well, apparently that's based on, it doesn't fit the fact situation at hand with the trust.
I have worked with a city that likes to own the land, own the building, and then lease it all out to a nonprofit to run it, the historical society or and so that's when it makes sense. But it's a lease with usually a nonprofit or something like that. To lease a property between a
City-
trust
city
and its
trust.
beneficiary is just kind of odd.
Yeah.
So,
Well-
The next thing we can do is go work on the senior center.
Form a trust.
I would not recommend
No,
a trust.
no, we don't wanna,
And I'll tell you that I'm not at all opposed to the idea of a dissolving a trust, but it's not a simple process.
Well, I don't.
And so I'm always saying, no, don't, if you've got a purpose, I'm not saying it to Perkins necessarily, but if you've got a purpose and it can be fulfilled in a time period, create an advisory committee. Because if you go create a trust, if the purpose is not to go borrow money, which we will never really, if you look at the PIDA indenture, there is almost nothing that we might want to do that we couldn't do through PIDA as far as borrowing money. It's very broad. So I don't think we're gonna need to create a trust to borrow money. So I think for the most part, we would be creating an advisory committee for a purpose. Because the trusts, once they're created, they're a lot of work to dissolve, and you're supposed to have a meeting every month, you know?
And they hadn't had a meeting since like November 3rd or something, right?
Ida? Probably.
Okay.
Well, I think we reduced
No,
our,
PIDA lease doesn't.
well, No, it doesn't, they reduce their meeting dates.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
you can keep a trust, but not have to meet every month,
Well, that's true.
if you don't have
Have to
business.
At least meet.
I think we get through design and construction, and then we can reevaluate what
What
Yeah.
our, what our goals are at that point.
Our
purposes.
goals are to get that library built.
Yeah.
Charlotte's getting tired of waiting.
I know.
94 years old and it's gotta be built before I die.
You're gonna hang on forever, darling.
I'm done with my questions, Linda.
Don't you get in any hurry for it. All right, let's go back to item number 10, adjourn.
Right.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I didn't know.
And then I need a second.
I'll second.
All right, there we go.
Beat Melissa too.
So I've got Brian, Linda, Charlotte, and Melissa. Yes. So you can go.
Creates,
Those are, I think those are what the original trust documents were, that looks the same as that. I don't know.
That's PIDA.
Oh, that's
That's
PIDA.
PIDA. That's PIDA's indenture. That's the trust indenture.